shame. Nikola Tesla sits calmly beside his magnifying transmitter in his laboratory, surrounded by the very electrical forces he harnessed to revolutionize our understanding of power and wireless transmission. During World War II, an Austrian boy's face lights up with pure joy as he receives a pair of new shoes, a simple gift that meant everything in wartime Europe. Dorothy Counts walks with quiet dignity through a gauntlet of taunts and jeers from white male students at Charlotte's Harry Harding High School in 1957, breaking barriers as the first black student there. Liberated Jewish. Prisoners emerge from a death train in 1945, their hollow eyes and frail bodies bearing witness to unimaginable horrors they somehow survived during the Holocaust. Race officials physically attempt to remove Catherine Switzer from the Boston Marathon in 1967, but she persevered to become the first woman to officially finish the historic race, despite the aggression. In Holland, 1888, a Catholic woman and her Protestant husband rest in graves that reach toward each other across a dividing wall, their love transcending the religious boundaries that separated them. Harold Whittle's experiences sound for the very first time in 1974, his expression capturing the overwhelming wonder of entering a world he'd never heard before this transformative moment. A solitary man stands, one with arms crossed in 1936, refusing to raise his hand in the Nazi salute, while everyone around him conforms, displaying extraordinary courage amid rising tyranny. During the 1930s, desperate job seekers line up with handwritten signs advertising their skills and willingness to work, revealing the harsh economic reality faced by millions during the Depression. The first morning after Sweden switched from left side to right side driving in 1967 created chaotic scenes as confused motorists navigated Stockholm streets under the new traffic rules overnight. Around 1900 in British Burma, French colonial administrator François-Pierre Rodier sits on a local Burmese woman's back, challenging her strength after witnessing locals effortlessly carry heavy burdens daily. Workers are at Messrs. Olney's factory in Luton, Bedfordshire, carefully balance towering stacks of freshly crafted straw hats on their heads in 1933, transporting them to the packaging rooms. Joel Brodsky's iconic 1967 portrait captures Jim Morrison's intense gaze and raw magnetism, freezing the Doors frontman at the height of his creative powers and cultural influence that year. Shortly before his execution in March 1946, handcuffed Hungarian Nazi leader Ferenc Szalasi surveys the ruins of Budapest's Chain Bridge, the same river where his forces once threw resistance fighters. Exhausted Belgian coal miners crowd into a cramped elevator cage around 1900, their blackened faces and weary postures telling the story of another grueling shift deep underground. An American soldier from the 12th Armored Division stands vigilant over a group of German prisoners in 1945, the power dynamic of war clearly visible in their contrasting postures and expressions. Jane Fonda and her partner French director Roger Vadim make a glamorous appearance at the 1966 Venice Film Festival, embodying the sophisticated international cinema culture of that era. In a Chicago divorce court during 1948, a desperate man kneels before his wife, publicly begging for forgiveness in a dramatic scene that reveals the personal anguish behind legal proceedings. Timothy Treadwell, known as the Grizzly Man, poses with Alaskan bears in the late 1990s, documenting his controversial belief that he could peacefully coexist with these dangerous predators. Around 1930, at Fort Sheridan, soldiers find creative ways to pass idle hours. This playful moment captured in a photograph that humanizes military life beyond combat and training routines. Pro-pornography protesters march along South State Street in Chicago during 1974, their demonstration reflecting the decades-heated cultural battles over censorship morality and freedom of expression nationwide. Construction workers casually eat lunch while seated on a steel beam high above the city. In 1925, their fearless nonchalance demonstrating the daring spirit of early skyscraper builders. George Metesky, the bomber who terrorized New York City from the 1940s through 1957 by planting 33 bombs, was eventually found legally insane and committed indefinitely. During the 1950s, a man displays a massive 7-foot-long 15th century bearing sword, the ceremonial weapon dwarfing him and showcasing the impressive craftsmanship of medieval European armories. An elderly woman who fled the war zone sits exhausted on a bench in Amiens, France in 1918, her loyal cow standing beside her amid the displacement caused by war. Baseball players compete in the shadow of Egyptian pyramids at Giza in 1889, part of sports magnate Albert Spalding's ambitious worldwide tour designed to promote America's pastime internationally. In 1956, pilot Thomas Fitzpatrick's stolen plane sits on 191st Street in Manhattan after he drunkenly won a barroom bet by flying to New Jersey and back in 15 minutes. Queen Liliuokalani of Hawaii poses as a teenage princess during the 1850s decades, before becoming the island's only queen regnant and last sovereign before the Hawaiian kingdom fell. Photographer Oliver Noonan captured a young Vietnamese boy holding his little brother in 1969, both standing amid the ruins of the Sun Village during the devastating Vietnam War. An anti-communist rebel conceals a Molotov cocktail behind his back during Hungary's 1956 revolution, photographed by John Sadovi in a moment of tension before violence erupted across Budapest. Jim Henson shares a moment with Bert in Ted Neuhoff's 1971 photograph The Puppeteer and his creation, embodying the creative genius that would enchant generations of children worldwide. Marvin Koner's 1959 photograph captures the warm, smoky atmosphere inside a traditional Irish pub in Dublin, where locals gather for conversation, camaraderie, and pints of dark stout. Michael Galinsky documented American shopping malls during the 1980s, capturing the vibrant consumer culture, fashion trends, and social spaces that defined a generation's adolescence and leisure time. In 1969, a resourceful mother repurposes an inverted open-frame trash can as a playpen to safely contain her baby while she crochets peacefully in the park outdoors. Diego Maradona, who lived from 1960 to 2020, remains one of football's most gifted and controversial figures, his legacy forever marked by moments of brilliance and personal struggles. British soldiers on leave stroll through the historic canals and piazzas of Venice, Italy in 1945, finding brief respite from combat during the final months of the World War II. Kathy Hoppe raises her fist defiantly in 1970 after resigning her Miss Montana title, choosing activism over pageantry when sponsors restricted her anti-war writings and political involvement nationwide. Around 1930, at the Windrock Navajo Reservation in Arizona, a curious lamb gently approaches a Navajo baby, resting peacefully in a traditional cradleboard carrier photographed by Armstrong Roberts. Nicole Kidman enjoys a sunny afternoon in Central Park with Isabella in 1994, her adopted daughter with Tom Cruise during a rare private moment away from Hollywood's spotlight. A Bedouin mother in Saudi Arabia, photographed in 1948, embodies the timeless strength and grace of nomadic life, her traditional dress and bearing reflecting centuries of desert culture. A mother poses proudly with her 10 daughters in Boston during 1952, their coordinated outfits and smiling faces representing a remarkable family portrait from post-war America's optimistic era. Around 1940 in Chamizal, New Mexico, a boy savors the simple pleasure of roasted sweet corn, freshly cooked atop a hot stove in his rural community's humble home. Archaeologist Gabriel Gustafsson and his team excavate the Oseberg burial mound near Tønsberg, Norway, in 1904, uncovering Viking treasures that would transform our understanding of Norse culture forever. The photograph, titled Aid from the Padre from 1962, captures a moment of spiritual comfort and military chaplaincy, though the specific context of this compassionate encounter remains beautifully mysterious. Mrs. Patty Ramji poses beside her 1975 Ford Pinto in 1978, displaying a warning sign about its explosive danger after Ford recalled 1.5 million vehicles for faulty fuel tanks. A Japanese archer demonstrates traditional Kyudo techniques during the 1870s, his formal stance and authentic equipment captured during a period when Japan was rapidly modernizing under Western influence. Around 1910 in Africa, photographer Dugmore captures a charging rhinoceros in this heart-stopping moment, documenting both the continent's magnificent wildlife and the dangers faced by early photographers. LAPD officers stand at attention during roll call in 1947, photographed by Edward Clark, their crisp uniforms and military bearing reflecting post-war law enforcement culture in Tidenart, Los Angeles. Around 1930, a young indigenous woman cradles her baby at a train station, her traditional clothing and stoic expression capturing a moment of transition between ancestral ways and modernity. The winner of the Most Scary Woman Award in the United Kingdom during 1883 poses for her portrait, her dramatic appearance reflecting Victorian-era fascination with the grotesque and unusual. Houdini stands poised at the edge of Harvard Bridge in Boston during 1908, preparing to leap into the water before 20,000 spectators emerging 40 seconds later with shackles opened. During the 1980s, mechanics perform an engine swap with tools spread across the ground, their hands-on work representing an era when car enthusiasts routinely modified vehicles in home garages. A coal miner who operates conveyor belts in a non-union West Virginia mine during the 1970s returns home, his daughter beside him, both bearing the weariness of working-class life. Yuri Gagarin's first neo-photograph after his historic 1961 spaceflight shows him near the villages of Smelovka and Podgorno in Saratov Oblast, USSR, having just become humanity's first space traveler. A Polish policeman models bulletproof armor in Warsaw during 1934, the experimental protective gear reflecting law enforcement's adaptation to increasingly violent crime during Europe's turbulent interwar years. Mobsters conceal their faces behind hats during Al Capone's 1931 trial in Chicago. Their attempts at anonymity, captured as organized crime, faced unprecedented legal scrutiny during Prohibition's final years. Around 1930, blues pioneer Robert Johnson sits inside a photo booth for one of only 2 confirmed photographs ever taken of the legendary musician whose influence transcends generations. Housewife Barbara Dunlap experiences the effects of LSD during a 1963 research experiment in Cambridge, Massachusetts, photographed by John Lungard for the International Federation for Internal Freedom Studies. American soul singer Wayne Cochran signs autographs for enthusiastic fans in 1966, his distinctive platinum hair and energetic stage presence making him one of the era's most flamboyant performers. In Lapeer, Michigan during 1952, angry farmers physically overpower a sheriff attempting to evict a widow from her farm after the insurance company failed to remove her themselves. During the early 1900s in Shanghai, China, a smiling man poses cheerfully while eating rice. His warm expression offering a rare glimpse into everyday life in pre-revolutionary China. Macy's loss prevention team poses with their backs turned in 1948, concealing their identities since they worked undercover as shoppers to catch thieves inside the department store daily. A motorist receives directions from a state trooper in New Mexico during 1939, photographed by Luis Martin, capturing a moment of roadside assistance on America's expanding highway system. Princess Diana meets comedian Rowan Atkinson in 1984 while greeting the cast of the Royal Variety Show, her warm smile and genuine interest reflecting her famous ability to connect with people. Michael Rosenberg, age 10, reads newspaper accounts of his parents' execution while his 6-year-old brother Robert stares blankly at pages in Toms River, New Jersey during 1953. Passengers sleep peacefully aboard a crowded night train in Japan during 1955, photographed by Nicolas Bouvier, their makeshift rest reflecting the country's busy post-war transportation culture and exhaustion. A photographer and geologist document the erupting Taal volcano in the Philippines during 1912, risking their lives to capture this violent natural phenomenon while standing dangerously close to molten fury. In 1951, curious sightseers park their cars in Queens, New York to watch a massive Pan Am Boeing 377 Stratocruiser taxi beneath an underpass photographed by Anthony Stewart. Football fans at West Ham in London during 1930 pass a young boy overhead toward the front, ensuring the child gets a clear view of the game in this heartwarming display. A teenage girl loses herself in ecstasy at an Elvis Presley concert in 1957 at the Philadelphia Arena, her emotional intensity captured as the king of rock and roll electrifies his audience. Robin Williams Street performs in New York City during 1979, this candid photograph capturing the comic genius honing his craft before becoming one of Hollywood's most beloved actors and comedians. French soldier Georges Roy, blinded and armless from war injuries, marries Marguerite Lavenu in Paris during 1917 after she heard of his condition and offered to become his wife. The earliest known photograph of men drinking beer captures friends enjoying Edinburgh ale together in 1844, their relaxed camaraderie preserved in this pioneering example of early photographic technology. A University of Madras student ties his hair to a nail in 1905 using this extreme method to prevent falling asleep while preparing for exams, demonstrating the intense academic pressure. This restored photograph from 1880 shows Old West outlaw Billy the Kid standing with his rifle, the legendary gunslinger's youth and casual stance belying his notorious reputation across the frontier. Around 1912, a young mountain girl stands barefoot outside her family's rustic cabin in the Great Smoky Mountains, offering a rare glimpse into isolated Appalachian life during that period. American photographer James Ricalton poses with 2 Kashmiri guards at the Imperial Delhi Durbar in British India during 1903, documenting the elaborate ceremony celebrating British colonial power there. 2 barefoot. My children walk along a dirt road to school in Claiborne County, Tennessee. During 1940, their poverty evident, yet their determination to learn remaining strong despite hardship. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Sturm reunites with his family in 1973 after enduring 5.5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, their emotional embrace becoming iconic. The High Executioner of Rewa, a princely state in British India, poses for his portrait around 1898, his formal attire and stern expression reflecting his grim official duties. Canadian newspapers created mock-up images of Adolf Hitler in various disguises during 1944, helping citizens recognize the Führer if he attempted to escape justice by altering his distinctive appearance. Around 1902, a woman poses fearlessly at Glacier Point in Yosemite National Park with majestic Yosemite Falls, cascading dramatically in the background, capturing early American wilderness, tourism, and adventure. Bill Gates, age 13, and future Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, 15, connect to a University of Washington PDP-10 computer in 1968 through their Lakeside School's teletype terminal. A British sailor aboard HMS Sphinx removes leg irons from a newly rescued slave in 1907, documenting the Royal Navy's efforts to suppress the slave trade decades after abolition. Around the early 1900s, 2 Native Americans perform on a hillside, one dancing while the other plays a drum, both wearing traditional clothing and headdresses photographed by George Reinhardt. British soldiers stationed at Tobruk during the North African campaign in 1941 wear gas masks while peeling onions, finding humor and relief from wartime tension through this comical photograph. A young girl holds a penguin's flipper gently as they walk together around the London Zoo in 1937, capturing an innocent moment of interspecies connection that captivated visitors then. The torch and arm of the Statue of Liberty stand on display at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia, offering Americans a preview before France's gift was fully assembled. Steve Buscemi poses proudly in his New York City Fire Department uniform during 1980 years before his acting career took off, serving his community as a dedicated firefighter. Ian Dixon photographed Ozzy Osbourne in 1975, capturing the Black Sabbath frontman during the height of heavy metal's emergence his intense presence defining an entire generation's rebellious spirit. Arthur Rothstein documented a Saturday afternoon in Florence, Alabama during 1942, capturing small-town American life during World War II when communities rallied together on the home front nationwide. Thomas Edison poses with his second phonograph invention in Washington around 1878, the revolutionary device in his hands destined to transform how humanity experiences and preserves sound forever. The Pauley family gathers for Christmas dinner near Smithfield, Iowa in 1936, their modest meal of potatoes, cabbage, and pie reflecting the hardships faced during the Great Depression. Sharon Tate radiates beauty and joy in this 1968 photograph, captured during the peak of her Hollywood career less than a year before her tragic death shocked the world. A dedicated postman delivers Christmas mail through Chicago in 1929, carrying an enormous sack of letters and packages during the holiday season, despite challenging weather and the Depression's onset. Keanu Reeves shares a meal and conversation with a homeless man in West Hollywood during 1997, his genuine compassion and humility revealing the character behind a Hollywood star persona. This beautiful trio of friends posed together in 1987, their bold fashion choices, confident expressions, and vibrant energy perfectly capturing the decade's optimistic spirit and distinctive style. A California teacher demonstrates the physics of surfing to students in 1970, bringing science education to life by connecting complex concepts to the beach culture surrounding their coastal community. Young Freddie Mercury holds a cricket trophy proudly in Bombay, now Mumbai, during 1954 years before his legendary voice would transform rock music and inspire millions worldwide. Around 1890, American sharpshooter Annie Oakley demonstrates her extraordinary skills while riding side saddle on a rearing horse during Buffalo Bill's Wild West show tour through Italy, photographed by Promoli. Anthony Barboza's 1970s photographs capture Harlem couples in intimate moments, their style, grace, and dignity reflecting the rich cultural life thriving in New York's historic African-American community. David Letterman and Bill Murray share a moment during the 1982 taping of the very first Late Night with David Letterman, photographed by Nancy Kaye as television history unfolded. Children cast their votes for a new mayor of Tottstown in 1955 at a Children's Society playground in New York City, learning democratic principles through this imaginative civic exercise. Polish pole vaulter Władysław Kozakiewicz makes a defiant gesture to the hostile Soviet crowd after setting a world record and winning gold at the 1980 Moscow Olympics, despite deafening whistles. The Manhattan skyline rises majestically around 1932, its Art Deco towers representing American ambition and architectural innovation during the depths of the Great Depression's economic devastation nationwide. Eddie Adams photographed an unidentified Inuit man from Alaska in 1970. His weathered face and traditional clothing telling stories of Arctic survival resilience and cultural heritage spanning generations. The body of an American paratrooper killed near the Cambodian border is lifted to an evacuation helicopter in Vietnam's war zone sea during 1966, photographed by Henri Huet. Halloween costume evolution spans from the 1860s through the 2010s, revealing how America's celebration transformed from homemade simplicity to elaborate commercial productions, reflecting changing cultural values and consumer habits. Sir Sean Connery, who lived from 1930 to 2020, defined James Bond for generations, his charismatic portrayal establishing the template for cinema's most enduring spy character across decades. Construction workers enjoy their lunch break perched on a steel beam atop the RCA building at Rockefeller Center in 1932, casually dining hundreds of feet above New York City streets. 5-year-old Tim Gregory reluctantly wears a peculiar plastic collar brush in Los Angeles. During 1950, the device designed to clean children's necks without soap as they play outdoors. Willard Culver photographed Lauterbrunnen, Switzerland in 1950, capturing the village's stunning alpine setting where dramatic waterfalls cascade down towering cliffs into the peaceful valley below throughout the year. A billboard at a Manhattan Project facility during the 1940s reminds workers that their secret atomic research must never be discussed, emphasizing the life or death importance of wartime secrecy. Trans World Airlines Terminal at Idlewild Airport, later renamed JFK, showcased futuristic architecture between 1956 and 1960, photographed by Ezra Stoller and Balthazar Korab during aviation's glamorous jet age. The Hoover Dam nears completion in 1936. Workers standing on the structure's face during the last day before the mighty Colorado River was finally released through this engineering marvel. Pharaoh Tutankhamun's sandal, crafted from a leather golden faience between 1332 and 1323 BC, demonstrates the exquisite artistry and luxury enjoyed by ancient Egypt's royal rulers 3 millennia ago. A serene moment from the 1890s shows someone enjoying a peaceful cup of tea, this simple photograph capturing the timeless comfort found in quiet reflection and a warm beverage. Prize-winning hairdressers display their elaborate coiffures at a Munich, Germany contest on May 1, 1964, assuring observers that anyone with patience could replicate these extravagant evening styles. The Panasonic RS-296 U.S. carousel deck from 1972 represents an engineering marvel, its iconic rotary drum capable of automatically or playing 20 cassette tapes in sequence without manual intervention whatsoever. One of the last images of Judy Garland was captured just 3 weeks before her death from a barbiturate overdose in June 1969, the legendary performer's struggles finally overwhelming her. This vintage 1913 French postcard features a black cat resting comfortably in bed with the caption "Port Vane," playfully presenting the feline as a bringer of good luck and fortune. Albert Einstein, age 52, stands on Ledbetter Beach in Santa Barbara, California. During 1931, the brilliant physicist taking a rare moment of leisure along the Pacific coastline that year. Barcelona's Sagrada Familia rises under construction in 1905. Antoni Gaudi's visionary cathedral already displaying the revolutionary organic forms that would define his architectural genius for generations to come worldwide. An abandoned boy clutches a stuffed animal amid the ruins left by German aerial bombing of London in 1945. His isolation and small companion symbolizing childhood innocence lost. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center rise skyward during construction in 1971. These engineering marvels destined to define Manhattan's skyline for 3 decades before their tragic destruction. Former President Barack Obama appears as a young boy with his mother Ann Dunham in Hawaii during the 1960s, decades before he would make history as America's first black president. The Monsanto House of the Future stood in Disneyland's Tomorrowland. During the 1950s, its revolutionary, all-plastic construction and futuristic design, offering visitors a glimpse of tomorrow's living spaces today. Around 1950, photographer Kurt Hutton captured a man emerging from a manhole, whistling and gazing at a woman's ankles, passing by this candid street photograph, revealing everyday urban moments. Xerox Corporation introduced the Xerox Star 8010 workstation in 1981, featuring the first commercially available computer mouse alongside revolutionary graphical interface and Ethernet networking that transformed personal computing forever. East Berlin policemen peer through barriers at a photographer in West Berlin during 1961. The divided city's tensions visible in this haunting image of surveillance and separation across ideological boundaries. An Italian immigrant child arrives at Ellis Island in New York during the early 1900s, one of millions seeking new lives in America, their hope and uncertainty captured in weary eyes. Shocked spectators in Jersey City watch Tower 2 crumble on September 11, 2001. Their horror, frozen as one of history's darkest days, unfolds across the Hudson River before them. Two adorable toddlers, bundled in traditional clothing, walk with their grandmother through Greenland. In 1973, the harsh Arctic landscape, their homeland where generations have thrived for centuries, despite cold. Motorcycle chariots race at the New South Wales Police Carnival. In 1936, these daring Australian officers performing spectacular stunts that thrilled crowds and demonstrated their riding skills and bravery. A student movement leader addresses crowds at Tiananmen Square in 1989 during the student-led demonstrations in China, their calls for democracy and reform echoing before the tragic government crackdown silenced them. Latvians and Lithuanians protest decades-long Soviet occupation of their homelands around 1991. Their peaceful demonstrations part of the independence movements that finally restored freedom to the Baltic states. Sidney Patrick Kelly, known as the Baccarat King, poses as he wished at Sydney's Central Police Station in 1924, part of Australia's experimental supplemental mugshots, allowing criminals creative self-presentation. Stephen and Viola Armstrong watched their television intently on July 20th, 1969, witnessing their son Neil become the first human to walk on the moon, pride and wonder overwhelming them. Travelers crowd the Greyhound bus station in Chicago during 1973, waiting to board buses for the Thanksgiving holiday. Their journeys home reflecting America's tradition of family reunions nationwide. Queen Victoria and her young Indian attendant Abdul Karim shared a close controversial relationship that scandalized the royal court before her family evicted and deported him after her death. Einstein and his wife Elsa depart on a 6-month boat journey to the Far East in October 1922, waiting outside their Japanese hotel to glimpse the famous physicist. Danish troops patrol the Iraqi southern town of Al-Gharma, located 15 kilometers north of Basra. During 2003, part of the international coalition forces deployed throughout Iraq after invasion. Michelangelo's statue of David stands encased in protective bricks during the 1940s, Florentine authorities safeguarding this Renaissance masterpiece from potential bomb damage throughout World War II's destruction across Europe. The Huffy radio bicycle from the 1950s combined transportation with entertainment, featuring a built-in radio that let riders enjoy music while cycling perfectly, capturing post-war America's gadget obsession. The Mark Twain tree in California stood over 1,300 years, reaching 331 feet high, before the U.S. Army cut it down in 1891, simply to prove sequoias. Ernest Cole photographed a lady flying a kite in Central Park, Manhattan during the 1970s, her simple pleasure and graceful movement capturing a peaceful moment in New York's urban oasis. Shorpy Higginbotham, claiming to be 14 but likely younger, worked as a greaser at Bessie Mine around 1910, carrying heavy grease pails while constantly dodging dangerous coal cars in Alabama. A poor steel worker's daughter, her face and clothes dirty from playing outside, drinks water from a dipper in their cramped Pittsburgh kitchen during the 1940s, hardship visible in every detail. A barefoot farm boy works the fields at Wabash Farms, Indiana, in 1938, his rolled overalls and steady grip on the plow revealing the hard labor and responsibility rural children shouldered. Two Soviet female pilots from the 46th Guards Night Bombing Regiment posed together their youth and determination, embodying the thousands of women who flew dangerous night missions against Nazi forces throughout the war. Two boys sprint desperately across Sarajevo's infamous Sniper Alley in 1995, cradling their dog while fleeing deadly crossfire, their childhood innocence shattered by the brutal Bosnian war siege surrounding them. Two elderly Volkssturm members, Nazi Germany's last resort militia, appear visibly relieved after surrendering to British troops in Bocholt on March 28, 1945, their war finally over as the Reich crumbled. Two Health Corps representatives discuss oral contraceptive usage with a village woman in Iran during the 1970s, part of the Shah's modernization efforts to expand healthcare and family planning nationwide. Two soldiers stand beside wooden stocks at Cincinnati's Fountain Square in 1917, the punishment device bearing signs reading, "This is for traitors," and made somewhere in America during wartime fervor. Two women browse inside an old country store in Manitowoc, Wisconsin during 1910, surrounded by goods and merchandise that served as the commercial heart of small-town American rural life. Two women purchase cocaine capsules from their dealer while a lookout watches in the background. Berlin, 1929, documenting the open drug trade flourishing during Germany's turbulent Weimar Republic years. Two young boys in Montreal collect rubber for the war effort on April 29, 1942. Their contribution to Canada's home front supporting Allied forces through essential material recycling during scarcity. Two young women stroll confidently along Broadway between 48th and 49th Streets in New York during 1969, their fashion and carefree attitude perfectly capturing the era's youth culture and urban energy. The U.S. Army Air Force's B-24 Liberator named fertile myrtle flies through anti-aircraft fire during a bombing raid on Hungary's Almas Fusida oil refinery on August 9, 1944, striking vital Axis fuel production. U.S. Marines advance over rugged hills on Guadalcanal on January 10, 1943, their grueling campaign to reclaim the Pacific Island from Japanese forces, marking America's first major offensive victory. USS Saratoga, designated CV-36, docked at Puget Sound Navy Yard on May 14, 1942. The aircraft carrier undergoing repairs and modifications during the Pacific War's critical early months. President Franklin Roosevelt, Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and their combined chiefs of staff gather at the Casablanca Conference between January 14th and 24th, 1943, planning Allied strategy to defeat the Axis. President John Kennedy meets with Somali Prime Minister Abdirashid Ali Sharmakeh in Washington on November 27, 1962. Both leaders tragically destined for assassination later that same decade in different nations. U.S. aerial reconnaissance photograph reveals a medium-range ballistic missile launch site at San Cristobal, Cuba on November 1, 1962, providing crucial evidence during the Cuban Missile Crisis's dangerous nuclear standoff. U.S. sailors pose with their heads shaved to collectively spell out hell in June 1944, their bold statement and camaraderie reflecting the defiant humor that sustained servicemen through wartime stress. USS Brooklyn rests at the League Island Navy Yard. Between 1896 and 1901, the armored cruiser representing America's naval expansion during the era when the nation emerged as a global power. A US M-36 tank destroyer and its crew positioned themselves in Fosse near Trois-Ponts, Belgium, between late December 1944 and early January 1945, during the desperate battle of the Bulge's frigid combat. U.S. Marines drink coffee aboard USS Arthur Middleton on February 19, 1944, after enduring 2 days of brutal fighting on Eniwetok Atoll in the Marshall Islands, exhaustion evident in every face. U.S. German tanks tuck into the trees for concealment in Belgium during late December 1944, seeking cover from German artillery and air attacks during the Battle of the Bulge's fierce winter fighting. U.S. soldiers struggle to extricate a jeep hopelessly stuck in thick Italian mud on November 11, 1943. The miserable conditions slowing Allied advances up the peninsula as much as enemy resistance. U.S. naval recruits stand awkwardly with mattresses tied around them as makeshift life preservers at Newport Naval Training Station, Rhode Island, in April 1917, America just entering World War I, unprepared. U.S. soldiers who defected to North Korea during the Korean War posed together during the 1950s, these controversial prisoners of war choosing to remain behind the Iron Curtain after the armistice. USAF F-15S and F-16S fly over massive oil fires set by retreating Iraqi forces during Operation Desert Storm. In 1991, Saddam Hussein's scorched earth tactics, creating environmental catastrophe across Kuwait. A USAF military policeman performs guard duty while sitting comfortably in his Jeep at APRA Harbor, Guam in November 1948. Peacetime military life settling into routine after World War II's intensity. Two cyclists share a cigarette during the Tour de France in 1920, their casual camaraderie highlighting how different professional cycling once was before modern sports science, anti-doping regulations, and corporate sponsorships transformed the grueling race into today's intensely competitive, scientifically optimized event. A Titanic survivor provides a woman with an autograph, the tragic disaster's fame, creating instant celebrity for those who escaped the doomed luxury. Liners sinking their survival stories becoming valuable commodities as the public remained obsessed with every detail of history's most famous shipwreck. Klondikers posed together in 1899 during the Klondike Gold Rush. These fortune seekers, having traveled to Canada's Yukon Territory, chasing dreams of instant wealth, joining tens of thousands who endured brutal conditions and treacherous journeys, hoping to strike it rich in the frozen north. A rare photograph from the 1970s captures an early television remote control. The bulky device connected by a long cable to the television set, representing the first generation of technology that would eventually free viewers from walking across rooms to change channels manually. Thomas Edison stands beside an electric car in 1913, the famous inventor believing battery-powered vehicles represented transportation's future, ironically predicting what would eventually happen over a century later when environmental concerns would finally revive electric automobile technology across the entire industry. A milkman makes his rounds, dropping off fresh bottles and picking up empties in 1939, providing essential daily doorstep delivery service before refrigeration and supermarkets transformed how Americans purchased dairy products, ending this once common profession that defined neighborhood morning routines nationwide. A woman plays a specially designed piano for people undergoing bed rest in 1935, the unusual instrument allowing bedridden patients to continue making music during long recoveries, demonstrating how inventors created adaptive technologies to maintain quality of life and creative expression despite physical